It doesn't take a lot for a fire to spread, especially if that fire is a virus. Now you have two options. You can either join the fire or fight the fire. Is this dialogue working? So comics and graphic novels. I like them. Comics are without a doubt one of my favorite forms of storytelling. Not only do I get to read an awesome story conceived by the mind of the author, I get to see what's happening! I've been an avid reader of comics and graphic novels for as long as I can remember. I think one of the first graphic novels I ever read was Randa Telgemeier's Sisters. I think I got it at like a Scholastic book fair in like 4th grade. I read it, and fell in love with her work. And now I have like 5 other books from her. Comic strips are another thing that I like. Instead of a 60-page epic full of action, build-up, and character development, I get a silly little haha within 3 or more panels. Stuff like Garfield and whatnot. I know a majority of the comic strips are very similar and formulaic, but I still like them. Now I would like to make a video about all of the comics and graphic novels that I like, but that'd be way too long and I feel like my phone would explode. Well great, now what? If there are too many comics that I like for me to talk about, what can I make a video on? Tell us about your tales. That's right. I, Nerdy Sketches YT, am a comic creator myself, and I will be showing you all of my comics. So let's get things started with... So when it comes to me making comics, I started off with making some really short ones that were done on one piece of paper and whatever popped in my head at the time. These were usually based on whatever I was into at the time, mainly being about Zelda. And also I feel like a lot of the jokes were a lot funnier in my head at the time. Overall, there isn't really much to talk about with these. I might make a video talking about these at some point. So now let's actually get into the stuff that I want to show you, starting off with... Code 22, the very first comic book I ever made. I made this out of boredom in class because I realized I had notebooks that I was never going to use in school that year, so I decided to make a sci-fi action adventure comic. Code 22 follows the story of Marie Van Schwartz, otherwise known as Agent 22, as she works for the organization ISAC, which stands for the Institution of Stealth, Strength, and Agility Combat, which was formerly Corporation before I decided to change it like 5 minutes ago. Everything's fine and dandy, until they aren't. And she gets thrown out by a steampunk-themed villain named Clockwork. So now she has to find her way back along with her girlfriend named Lydia, yes, they are a lesbian couple, and ultimately take down Clockwork. Overall, Code 22 is a pretty simple story in terms of what else I made, but I still think it's a pretty good comic for my very first one. Now, there is one gripe I have with this comic. The execution wasn't very good. The way I do comics is that I think about what the chapter is going to be like, and then I think to myself, how can I stretch this out without making it too long or too short? That's the mentality I take to making comic books. I also envision each chapter like a TV show episode. Every action, piece of dialogue, and panel I picture in my head like it's an episode on a show. Now that's what I did when making Code 22. But for some reason, when making Chapter 1, I looked at it and went, there's too much going on here. I'm going to split Episode 1 into 3 episodes instead. Which resulted in really short chapters when it was originally supposed to be only 1. I kid you not, Chapter 3, which should have been the end of Chapter 1, is only 3 pages in length. And this problem is extremely evident as you go on. In Volume 3 of Code 22, Chapter 7 is 3 pages, Chapter 8 is like 5 pages, and considering how long the chapters are, I actually think chapters 9 to 10 are actually pretty decent in length. But overall, this comic is in desperate need of a reboot. Code 22. Current status, finished. There is more story to tell, but I'm gonna have to redo it before I get into any of that. So let's move on to the next comic, which is... If Code 22 is on life support, then this comic already died. This comic gets weird, so strap in, folks. Dimensional Divers is all about the multiverse. More specifically, my multiverse. And even more specifically, this part. This comic follows the story of my avatar as he meets a female version of himself and meets other variants of himself, together with the help of a wide variety of characters like Becky, the Gamer, Nyardy Sketches, and my friends. We all have to team up to stop an interdimensional being from destroying and reshaping the multiverse. This is just the Spider-Verse movies. Yep. Now look, I didn't copy this on purpose. It's not like I took notes and completely stole the idea. That's Hollywood's job. To me, it's more of a funny coincidence. The comparison between these movies and this comic just kind of came to me one day. But still, this is just the Spider-Verse movies minus the whole hippity-hoppity, get out of our spider society. They actually apparently need my avatar as he's the most important one. Welcome to Mary Sue 101 class, you better start taking notes. This comic is a cool idea I have, a silly one-off, and also just a, what the heck, let's make a cool multiverse adventure story for me. But that doesn't excuse the fact that I gave up on this 3 pages in. I simply just lost interest in this comic, even though I wanted to do it. Similar with Code 22, I might revisit it someday, but until then, Dimensional Divers is dead to me. Dimensional Divers, current status, unfinished. So let's move on to a story that I actually care about. This is the part of the video where things get violent. We ain't on Sesame Street now, kids. Ultra Killer is a storyline revolving around a zombie apocalypse and the people surviving in it. More specifically, Tina Ferguson, a self-proclaimed Ultra Killer. Yes, I know the name is similar to the hit 2020 indie game Ultra Kill. One of my friends pointed this out and I didn't even know the game existed, so oops. Anyway, Ultra Killer is simply about Tina and friends venturing across the United States. There's Carson, the demolitions expert and pyromaniac. Carlin, I don't really know how to describe him. And then Scarlet, the queen of the bloodbath as she calls herself. Now there are parts of this comic revolving around government conspiracies and whatnot, but we don't need to worry about that. One thing I will mention is the amount of violence and swearing in this. The violence makes sense. It's a zombie comic after all. There's gonna be lots of death. Welcome to the kill count. But I feel like I took the swearing a bit too far. I was once rereading it to see how it held up and I realized, damn. Tina's kind of a piece of shit. I mean, yeah, she's been in a zombie apocalypse for the past few years, so of course she's constantly upset. But geez, she lashes out a lot. Hey Tina, I know you're upset that I kinda up your life, but at the same time, I feel like you should shut the up, Carson. You sorry excuse for a piece of little. So there's that. Ultra Killer is easily in my big 3 comics because it's one of the few that I actually talk and think about the most. And we'll be getting to the next one in a bit. So let's finish this segment off. Ultra Killer, current status, unfinished. I might continue or reboot it someday. And now we're on the last comic of this video, which is also my personal favorite. So it's time for us to talk about Naratra is easily the biggest storyline I've ever made. This comic is the final boss of my other comics, so let's talk about it. Naratra is an action fantasy comic book series that follows a large cast of characters going on adventures and trying to solve problems in the land of Naratra. And when I say large cast, I mean it. The main group has 7 characters, and don't get me started on all the villains and side characters. There are just way too many. Naratra is an overarching story, but it's told in separate segments. One story arc revolves around them venturing out to sea, the next one they go to space, and then another one where things turn violent. Yeah, this comic does kind of have a bit of a tonal issue, but each story arc is able to keep its tone. I made this storyline in my head for a few reasons. Number 1, I wanted to make an actual fantasy story. I had done one before, but like Dimensional Divers, this story is kind of dead to me, and parts of it ended up being used for that comic. Number 2, I wanted to see how much I could fit into one story before it becomes too much. Remember how I said with Code 22 I envisioned my comics like TV shows? Well, with Naratra, guess how many seasons there would be? Time's up. 14. There are 14 seasons, each one being around 9 to 12 chapters long, and each chapter being around 20 pages. So simply put it, this is my most ambitious comic yet. And for number 3, I simply wanted to have fun with this. I'm a huge sucker for fantasy, so I wanted to see what I could do with this genre of media. So yeah, Naratra is my biggest storyline today, but is also my personal favorite. When it comes to my Mount Rushmore or Big 3 of my comics, Naratra is easily up there with some others that I like. Now, let's finish this video. Naratra. Current status, ongoing. Yeah, with what I'm doing with Naratra at the moment, it's still going. In fact, I'm currently drawing volume 3 out of... And with that, we've finished part of our journey through my imagination. Trust me, there's way too much going on up here. Who knows, maybe I'll make another video talk about other storylines I've come up with. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe for more random content from yours truly. Tune in next time, folks.